Welcome back to Unfinished Business. This is the show where we talk about what it really takes to build a business from the ground up, how success gets defined along the way, and the lessons it takes to get there, and the work that's never quite finished. Today's conversation is one that I think a lot of business owners need, especially those that are in $1 to $10 million range, because if you're at that stage, you're growing, but it also means you're spending more, managing more, trying to make sense of where the business is and actually performing and where it's not. So today I am joined by Marc Freedman, who's the CEO and founder of Expense to Profit. His work goes beyond just reducing the expenses. He helps businesses operate more efficiently, improve profitability, and build healthier teams through his programs. Mark, so looking forward to this conversation as I shared with you backstage.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Kimberly. I look forward to it as well.
Yeah. So let's get started with your path. So for someone that doesn't know you, and I actually have come across your book several times, so I'm excited to kind of dive into that as well. So I've known you from afar, but how did you get into this work about, expense reduction and business efficiency?
So, being in the consulting space for 40 years and being involved with businesses, you meet a lot of people, you pick up a lot of things. And at one time in the early years, when you would get together with a business, you would create a business plan, you would figure out where do you want to be, how do you want to grow, how do you want to be there, how are you going to spend money to grow. I was really never good on the revenue side of the equation. My strong suit was with the relationships I had with vendors and pricing. In 2011, one of my very good friends said to me, you really ought to just concentrate on the expense side. That's where you're really good. You bring me in for the revenue side because that's where I'm really good. So he basically introduced me to a guy who was part of expense reduction analysts. They're kind of like the 700-pound gorilla in our space. Explained to me how they were doing business and it was on a success base. And so there's no upfront consulting fees, which, when you're used to upfront consulting fees and you go to a success-based model, takes a little bit getting used to it. My wife was a little challenged with that model, but she got used to it very quick.
To, may I ask a question about that? Because I think that is something that we don't talk a lot about is, how you building a business or life as a solopreneur, entrepreneur, how that affects your family. So what was she struggling with around that?
Well, if you think about it, you've got multiple clients. You're charging them a consulting fee up front. They have no idea whether you're going to be successful. And the fact that you share with them your successes and other businesses like them that you've helped, to going to we're not going to charge anybody up front anymore. So revenue goes to zero, right? And it's all based on success. If we save money, then we share in the revenues, in the savings, that the money gets put back into the business that you're helping. And if we don't save money, you're not going to get an invoice. So you're totally flipping that whole revenue model on its head, right? That said, sure, there was a period of time where we didn't have any revenues coming in, but thank God when you work hard and you build up enough capital to be able to support the business, yourself and everybody around you, you're able then to get over that level of uncomfortableness that my wife shared, and just build a business. And
Yeah.
then obviously once things start coming in, she realized, wow, that was the best thing we ever did. Why? The model you built, instead of you being the sole person in up front, you now have a whole team around you, a team of experts that really have category knowledge. Now, I had quite a bit myself, but you know, when you're dealing with medical practices and hospital systems and stuff like that, that language that they talk is really a lot different than most other businesses talk, right? So, my specialist, who was that guy at one time, was the chief pricing officer at a major hospital supplier, became president of that major hospital supplier's GPO division. And then when they did a merger, he left and started to work in the expense reduction business. And so when you could bring in people like that know how much a 3 millimeter needle costs in Washington, D.C., and how much one costs in Los Angeles, and have that kind of data and that knowledge, it helps you in being successful with your clients. So I
Yeah.
built a team with experts like that, whether it was in the banking space, the insurance space, the medical space, logistics. You think of all the different categories that businesses have. And
Mhm.
so I built this hub and spoke team of these 20 plus year, experts in categories. And so it allowed us as a consultant to be in the middle, Client has an issue, they always call us. We then get an answer if we don't know the answer. And it allowed us to build a bigger business and create more revenue. So, like I said, it was a period of time where she was uncomfortable, became very comfortable after a period of time as well.
And I'm curious about that model. So, were you all working, as on a revenue share model? So, in other words, your expert partners were getting a piece of that business as well?
Yep. Everybody
Okay.
everybody was in the rev share business. If we save money, we share in the savings. If we don't save money, then nobody gets an invoice. But I can assure you, based on having quite a bit of knowledge, being in the consulting space, understanding businesses and how they work, we look at, okay, how are you spending money? And I ask a business owner, well, which check do you hate writing most every month? Maybe that's where we should start, right? And so, if you can start where they really don't want to spend money and be successful in that category, then leads to a bunch of other opportunities inside that business. And then, of course, the referrals come and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Love that. So, what were they telling you in those early stages of building this model? What were the organizations that you were working with? What was the check they hated to write the most?
So I would say 70+% of the time, if not higher, it was insurance related. And it was typically health insurance related because premiums were going up 7 to 11 to 15% every year, whether they wanted them to or not, because that's just what it was. And having somebody who actually had the ability to argue with an insurance company about why are these premiums 15%? No, 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 they should be 6 or 5 or whatever. Increase. That was pretty profitable for us as a business, number one, and for obviously for the businesses we were helping because that kept the revenue in business. They could then grow your business.
Yeah,
So that was
love
the
that.
big one, but it really depended on where the business was. If they were a manufacturer, it may have been logistics, could have been a bigger issue. It really just depended.
Did those that repeated pattern of and I'm just diving into that one aspect of insurance, did that surprise you when you first got started?
No, not
Or
no, not at
you knew
all.
that that would be a very
Well,
big pain point?
yeah, because I mean, as a business ourselves, I hated the fact that I would get a raise in my rates. We had like no
Yeah.
claims, just that was kind of an easy one. So, and then once again, it's building yourself with the right experts that can go in and have that argument with the insurance company. Why? Because they're representing a lot of different businesses. See, the key, what a lot of businesses don't understand, and how we are more successful than you as a business going yourself and trying to argue for that. First of all, we'll get a longer term contract. We'll do a 3-year agreement with the vendor
Mhm.
or with the insurance companies. We'll have a conversation where they realize somebody's looking at what they're doing. And when somebody's got, a real good insight into what is right and what is not so right, I like to phrase it that way, then, there becomes a different conversation and things start to slow down. And the other thing too is, you think about it, in most cases, bills come in and you got a bookkeeper and they just pay the bill, right? We're dealing with a big manufacturing company right now that gets a quote on the shipping cost for a pallet weighing X many pounds going from point A to point B. But they're not comparing when the bill comes in. Is that what was promised in the pricing? Wow, really? So then the other one too that we get a lot of is someone will tell us, well, we're on a cost plus model. Let me see your agreement that you have with the vendor. What agreement? Well, cost plus. It's cost. Yeah, I'm sure it is.
We see that paper.
You have no definition of cost. We had a very large dental practice in the Midwest, and they were on cost plus 15%. And we're presenting our findings to them in the meeting. We got the CEO, the CFO, and been working predominantly with the CFO. And we're going to show them 18.2% savings across the board. And I said, so are you now cost minus 3%? The CFO didn't think that was so funny. The CEO was laughing his head off. So, if you don't define what cost is, like my buddy who does the benefits, man, when I was in charge of the GPO division on pricing, you don't know what I could bury in cost if no one asked me what cost was. So a lot of businesses just don't have the data. They don't have the information. And fortunately for us, we've done this for quite a while.
Yeah.
And, we do have that data. We do have that information. Of course, with AI today, you
I
know,
was just gonna ask. Yeah.
It can't get the same results. It's funny because we did a comparative for a business and AI showed us that this business, we could save them 1.3 million to 3.5 million, depending on whether it was a 5% savings or almost a 15% savings. We typically get 18 to 22% savings. So even as good as AI is, it's not as good as the data that we have. Because when we compared it to our data, we found, oh yeah, there's some additional savings we can rub out of these vendors a little more. It's knowledge is helpful. And AI is not there yet. It's
Yeah.
helpful. We have an AI solution inside our website for our clients and for our partners. It saves me a lot of time because now I don't have to write reports. It basically takes all the data, puts it in our report format,
Right.
spits it out to the client, and it's automatic. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's out there. It doesn't replace, but it does make things a lot more efficient.
Yeah. I want to ask some questions given your experience with this. How did you, in the earlier years getting started, before you had a ton of testimonials of, businesses that you've supported, how did you sell something, a service to people that don't always realize they need it?
Yeah, that's it. That's actually a great question. And the reason why it's a great question is that most of the time, a successful business is not challenged on the expense side, right? If they've got plenty of revenues and things are growing and they haven't tripped up yet, they're not usually a good client for us because there's ego at the top of the food chain. And I can give you a great story about one of the top franchises in Domino's who we helped recovered $1.3 million in overpaid workman's comp premiums.
Wow.
So we get introduced to the number two guy at Domino's and we're having a conversation. And after about 15 minutes, he says, well, I don't need your help. Really? Why is that? He says, because how do you think got to be the number two? I said, well, maybe you ought to call your buddy who's number one that's out on the West Coast and ask him if he's enjoying the $1.3 million we just returned to the business.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. You know, I'm glad we can't help you. Have a good day. So sometimes ego gets in the way when you're successful, and we're better off when we find a business that is growth challenged, because they don't have enough revenue to be put back into the business to grow the business. So for us, those are good clients, as well as somebody who's just, not really starting out because we're not going to find a lot of savings there. It's not going to be really meaningful. So if you've got a larger size business, there's obviously something where we can be helpful. It may be meaningful for them. It won't be so meaningful for us because we get paid by success. And it takes me just as long to do a $5 million business as a $10 million business as it does a $1 million business from
Yeah.
an analysis standpoint. And, like I said, we can be most helpful with a business that's challenged to grow, wants to grow, and you have someone who's in the leadership position, whether I call them whatever you will, CEO, president, chairman, owner, managing partner, whatever it is. I don't care what the title is. It doesn't matter to us. But it's the person at the top of the food chain who basically says, yeah, we're going to do this, and then pushes it down. Because if we come in at the lower level, the controller, the CFO, bookkeeper level, they think we're going to find something that's going to get them fired. We don't get
Uh,
people fired. The only time I've been doing this 40 years, two times we've had people fired. That's because there was something not very proper going on.
yes. Yeah.
And
Big red flags that you found.
yeah, I mean, and we uncovered something that just wasn't right. So, from that standpoint, we're not there we're there to make you look even better.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you flip that script, it actually you become a partner and then you're able to do so much more. And you can probably point out where that department has done a really good job managing. Just to your
100%.
point, they don't have the same buying power that your group might.
Right. I mean, and that's the
Yeah.
other thing too, is keep in mind, is we got hundreds of businesses doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I know he, has a good, he does nothing but Verizon. Now, believe it or not, on my phone, I have both Verizon and AT&T. When I travel, there's certain areas that Verizon's better. There's certain areas that AT&T do. You can't get Verizon service where I live. You have to use AT&T. I did. You have to take a look at things, and even my own business. Like, okay, so I'm looking at my wireless bill. I'm saying, why is this priced here and this priced here? And so I gave him my wireless bill. Okay. And we also have, the VoIP service on our mobile. So we don't have anybody answering phones these days. It's a VoIP service that goes to our back office and then it can be then transferred and what have you. It's all on the mobile. It's like amazing. Why is this line priced at this price and this line? And it's all the same service. We have everything is the same. So why is one line $22 and one line's $40? It's like, huh?
Yeah.
He's working on that. He's going to get it all straightened out. And so we even do things for our own business where it's like, it's kind of
Love
like
that.
awesome. So what prompted it was the bill was like $60 this month, larger than it usually is. Well, my son, who is our COO, he and my daughter-in-law went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. So when they turned their phone on and they were overseas, it's like $12, when he turned his phone on.
Yeah.
Okay, no big deal. But that's what prompted me to look at my phone bill. Otherwise, I'm just paying you the same amount every month. I'm not paying, right?
Not even recognizing.
All right,
You
well,
know, I love this on just this one tactic on so many levels, Mark, because for me, it speaks to if you wouldn't be a customer in your own business, then what the heck are you doing? So I love that. And then the other thing that comes to mind in every way that you're saying is especially with these AI tools that are coming out. I can see how businesses wanting to play in the sandbox are just escalating their on the expense side and have no idea they're paying 20 you know $20 here, $20 there, eating away at that profitability.
yeah. So it's interesting because I used to have all the tools, every single tool that was out there I had. I'm slowly getting rid of them one at a time to being the ones that I use most often and most effectively.
Same here.
I mean, they all pretty much do the same thing, but I'll tell you, Claude Cowork right now is by far it's the bomb as far as I'm concerned. And anyhow, so yeah, that's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, we're just here to help businesses be more successful and help them. And more success means better revenues. And better revenues, do you have the cash available to be able to grow your business? And if you don't, well, that's where we can be helpful. It's how we have fun.
What, in your opinion, let's kind of go in the segment of businesses that you are talking to now, that $1 to $10 million mark. What are they getting wrong when it comes to managing their finances? What are they missing?
So most use a very low level accounting software. So they can't really see detail on what it is they're doing. So that's somewhat problematic. It may be easy because everybody loves Intuit and their products, and everybody loves the other softwares and their products. But if you can't get down to the detail of what that bill is and be able to review, at least on a quarterly basis with your vendors, you know, download the data electronically. Believe me, the vendors have it available. You just have to get access to it. I mean, like
Yeah.
we've got one client right now that's running reports instead of because the vendor won't give us access to the digital detail. Well, why? Because they know that once we get access, they're in trouble. I mean, they know what we do.
Yeah.
It's very obvious what we do. I mean, they look at something, go, oh shit.
What are some other areas? So you mentioned it, accounting software. What are some other, pain points that the owners may think that everything's fine or they're assuming that things are fine, but they're really not. They're leaking money.
So a big one right now is benefits, right? What kind of benefits are you providing for your workforce, whether you're small or whether you're large? Believe it or not, there's benefits out there, even for the small guy today, that are extremely helpful. Think about what it costs if somebody comes, you train them, and they leave after a short period of time. Now you got to hire
Yeah.
somebody else, train somebody. Forget about the fact that, somebody, either it's you or somebody in your business, is taking the time to retrain this person on what you like to do and how you like to do it. And of course, if they come from somewhere else, they've already get predisposed as to how they do it. Well, that may not work in your system, right? You got to retrain them. Well, no, you're going to have all these kind of conflicts. So if you get somebody and you train somebody as to how you do something, right, retaining them will save you somewhere between $30 and $75,000.
Yeah.
A lot of people will think about that. Sometimes it's better to give somebody a couple $1,000 raise than lose
Mm,
that to somebody else. Because what is it going to cost you to train somebody else, to bring somebody else in, and so on and so forth.
yeah.
And so one of the big things that a lot of businesses have access to but are unaware is proactive wellness. And this is something you mentioned at the very beginning about the wellness.
Yes.
So the proactive, what does that mean? You talk to people, they provide health insurance for their employees. They say, oh no, we have a wellness program. Right. I know you do. That's a reactive wellness program. It's inside your health insurance program, which is reactive healthcare, not proactive
Yes.
healthcare.
Yes.
Believe it or not, it a zero cost. Matter of fact, not only is it zero cost, but it's beneficial to the business owner by almost $700 an employee in saved federal FICA taxes. So take that times how many employees you got,
Mhm.
right? That's what you'll save annually. And you'll have a program that costs $0 out of pocket because actually the savings are higher, but it's going to cost you $40 an employee. For the program, you'll have a proactive on your mobile device, okay, a software that, let's just say you've got young kids and you've got a problem and it's after hours and you can't get hold of the pediatrician. Where are you going to go? Well, most people go to the emergency room, right? Every emergency room is geofenced.
Mhm.
All of a sudden your phone rings. Hey, we see you're at XYZ emergency. Why are you there? Well, and they triage you right there. So you've got some medical professional on the phone triaging you to see what's going on. You know what?
Wow.
Actually, there's a 24-hour emergent care that is a mile and a half up the street. Why don't you go there? We'll get you admitted. So when you get there, they'll know you're coming. And you shouldn't be in the emergency room. Well, what's the difference? The emergency care is going to cost $1,500. The emergency room is going to cost probably $8,000.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that do to your health insurance premiums? Well, an $8,000 claim is certainly a lot more than a 50. They may not be paying $8,000, but I'm just saying, if you look at the size
Right.
of the claims, forget about the negotiated prices, but if you look at the size of the potential claim, your premiums are going up. They're going up
Yeah.
a lot more if you're or no, you need to be in the ER. We'll get you admitted. Just go sit in the emergency room. When someone calls you, you'll already be admitted. Why? Because the proactive health wellness program has the plan's information so they can get you already admitted and you don't have to sit there for an hour waiting for 45 minutes. So, wonder,
Mark, why didn't I meet you earlier in my life? My last child is graduating this year. I had 5. You know how many of those visits as an employee that would have had an opportunity to utilize this type of program and it be a benefit, which I wanna go deeper, but wow, incredible. I didn't even know that existed.
yeah. And so you have these wellness programs that are out there, these proactive wellness programs, and there's plenty of them. Some are better than others. I mean, 1,000 medications that are no cost. You've got a dog wellness program. You've got mental health. You got legal help. You got financial, all part of these programs.
Hmm.
So, and it costs nothing. Oh, and by the way, because you're reducing FICA taxes for the employee, think about like 401k comes out pre-tax. It reduces the cost for FICA for both the employer and for the employees. The employee, even though they're saving money, a lot of times they'll get an increase in pay. Well, the same thing with the wellness program. We're going to reduce your taxable income and we're going to basically put back the program. And oh, by the way, you're going to make an extra 80, 100, 120, maybe depending on the employee and how much they get paid. Could be more if you're a high paid employee. So there's those kinds of programs out there. And then there's also health insurance programs out there. You can actually do a off network program. Okay, offer employees a better option, create a healthcare savings account for them, and they can either spend it or not spend it, but it has to be spent at some point on health. It doesn't expire like an FSA account. And oh, by the way, they can go pick a plan on the exchange that they want to pick. And you're just going to spend the same thing you were spending before per employee per month. Go pick
Wow.
whatever you want. You don't want to buy. You buy the plan that's right for your family.
Yeah.
Those exist as well. So there's ways for businesses, especially in the healthcare space, both on the wellness side and on the non-traditional health insurance side, there's ways that you can actually save money as a business and oh, by the way, not worry about these increases as well.
Yeah. I love this and, to your point of, earlier, retaining the employee as opposed to the turnover and constant turnover. What have you seen by businesses that have implemented these programs as far as an employee retention? How is that connected to their performance in that metric?
So when you look at both employee retention as well as employee satisfaction, if you're satisfied, you're going to be retained.
Mhm.
If you're not satisfied, if there's something going on that's not, I mean, you can't obviously. I'm not talking about issues that someone may have with a boss or whatever. That you don't get away from, right?
Yeah.
So it actually goes from about a 70% level to over 85%. Could be 88%, 92%, depends on the business in the industry that they're in. But yeah, it's these programs are really helpful because most people are looking for benefits today, and they will stay with a lower paying job if the benefits are substantially better. And and the other thing too is keep in mind that wellness program, you have a doctor on your phone.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and leave office, take an hour while you're waiting and the doctor's, running late and, you're supposed to be seen at 1 o'clock and it's now 2 o'clock. You're not back in the office. You got productivity issues. You got, all these kinds of issues that happen, or you're taking a kid to the, whatever it is. Yeah. These programs, I mean, you've got a doc in your hand.
Have you seen, the direct impact in productivity as a result of these? And if so, like, what does that look like? I mean, in terms of hours saved.
Well, if you think about it, depending on your workforce, right? Older workforce has one type of problems. A younger workforce, as you already mentioned, has another type of problem.
Yeah.
Right? So depending on how many kids you have, how often are you out? How often do you have to go to the doctor? How often? Okay, those things didn't used to exist. Today they exist. And you could, you get a call from the nurse at school and the nurse says, oh, they got the sniffles or whatever. Now you call and say, hey, my nurse just called from school, got sniffles. And you do a conference call with the nurse and, yeah, put the kid back in class. They can come home on the bus, right? As opposed to going, schlepping to school, picking the kid up, taking the kid to the doctor. Now you're waiting to be seen in the sick business when everybody else is there.
Probably getting sick.
Right. Everybody else is in there. Why are they there? Because they're probably sick. They're not there for a wellness visit because you wouldn't be doing that during the beginning of the day, right?
Right, right.
So you expose yourself to all these different opportunities for
This
illness.
is this is
Yeah.
so
And so
interesting.
think about that logically, how that helps both keep the employee at work, but also it also keeps the kids healthier because they're now not exposed to all these environmental hazards.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anyhow, yeah.
So where should a business owner start if they've never thought about integrating one of the wellness programs or like you said on the health insurance savings side? Where should they begin?
Well, you just, I mean, there's plenty of information obviously on the web. You can go to our website too at expense2profit.com. We got plenty of information. We write articles all the time, sometimes once a week, sometimes every other week. It just depends on whether or not we're not going to write something if we don't feel it's helpful. Like we just did a big one on the FICA tax recovery for restaurants in hospitality businesses, and how businesses have overpaid FICA taxes on tips for those two categories. So if something's timing comes up, I mean, we got plenty of articles on our website. You can search them. There's obviously an index and go to the category and get information there. There's links from there to providers. You can get more information there. You can also always schedule a call with us too, and we're happy to have a conversation.
I love that. Let's go a little bit practical in a couple of other areas, but what should business owners have regular visibility into when it comes to their financial health?
Well, you should have regular visibility into your revenues and your expenses. How do they match up? Okay. And hopefully you're not spending more than you're taking in because that's not a menu for success. Right. And the other thing too, is if you're looking on an ongoing basis, okay, what did we spend last year? What are we spending this year? What are the variables? Right. Am I spending more? Am I spending less? If I'm spending less, why am I spending less? If we think we're doing the same amount of business, should I be spending less with this vendor? Oh, we got another vendor that we're doing business with. Well, keep in mind when you do multiple vendors, a new vendor may be giving you new pricing, more aggressive pricing at the beginning. Are you watching how they're changing pricing over time? And the other thing too is keep in mind, if, a new vendor comes in, they're going to be more aggressive. Why? They don't have your business,
Yeah.
right? But the
Yeah.
old vendor, it's easy to have a conversation with the old vendor and say, hey, look, we were just approached. Your pricing is, and I always say go high because you can always come down. You can't go up, right? So when I look at something, even if I haven't done the analysis, I know the pricing is at least 20+% above. So I always use a number that's not like, I don't say 25%. I don't say 20%. Why? Because it looks like you didn't do work. You just pulled something out of the air. I'll
Yeah.
say 23% or 22% or 22.8%. I mean, I'll give some really bizarre number. It's kind of like, when you look at stuff like that, it's kind of like, be realistic. Okay. If you know your business and you know what things are for what you're buying from vendors and services you're procuring, then you can look and say, okay, well, what was I paying 2 years ago? Well, why am I paying 42% higher now? Well, a lot of vendors raised prices not because they needed to, but because they could. Think about it during the pandemic. Were there supply chain issues? Yes, but not in services.
Yeah.
Supply chain issues were in product. Why is a service vendor raising prices the same as a product vendor? That doesn't make any sense, right?
Mhm.
You have to look back and maybe sometimes go back a couple of years and say, okay, well, wait a minute. We have the same vendor for the last 3 years. It was this price 3 years ago. It's this price now. What are they doing for me today that they weren't doing 3 years ago? Well, it's the same thing. It's the same service. Why is it 30% higher? You need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's one way for a business owner to, real quick find out what's going on. But obviously, you look at the areas that are important, right? The areas that where you're spending a lot of money, because having a conversation with someone where you're spending $10,000 and they're off, maybe by $500 is not going to be meaningful. And the other thing I always like to say is, you know, we may see that there's a 20+% opportunity to save, but maybe we'll only ask an existing vendor for 18 of the 20%.
Yeah.
Well, they still have to pay for a round of golf every now and again, right?
Right.
Or you can ask for all 20% and pay for your own round of golf and probably come out ahead, right?
Probably.
So, yeah, so those are some of the tactics.
So how often should you be looking at this? I mean, if you were to build a good habit around, making this a part of protocol, the time invested and how often?
Well, it depends on how much revenue your business is doing, right? Because I mean, if you think about it, you got a $10 million revenue business, probably 5 million is going to payroll. So you're really not going to look at that 5 million. You have the other 5 million that you're spending on rent, on healthcare, on da 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 da, right? Marketing, whatever it is that you're doing with the rest of that money. Look at the larger items, the items that are meaningful, and see if they are similar or kind of out of whack. And if they're out of whack, then you should have a conversation. I would say at least quarterly, you should be looking at this stuff.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts, because you're stepping in my world a little bit, but when it comes to marketing, what types of inefficiencies have you found in businesses that you've worked with?
It's always the ROI, right? Okay, you spent this money. What kind of business was generated? And we don't really get too into that other than so what this one business has a contract for it's a $200,000 a year contract. Wait a minute. I've got invoices that up to almost $300,000. Where'd the other $100,000 come from? Not paying attention to invoices. So that's obviously an issue that you always have to pay attention to. Is you know, and if you think about it, and a lot of times the bookkeeper doesn't know what the marketing or the advertising division or whatever the division is that's doing the sales. If sales and marketing aren't working together, you got a problem. That's a different other issue, right? Because a lot of times they're not. Sales
Many
one
times.
thing, marketing thinks another thing, and they got to be talking together, right? If they're not talking together, you're going to have an inefficient solution there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you got to pay attention to that. You got to pay attention to, hey, what are we supposed to be paying for? Well, we're supposed to be paying for this much, and whether it's pay per clicks or whatever it is, whatever your solution is that you're doing, just make sure it makes sense that whatever you're receiving, the revenues that you're gaining from whatever you're spending, there's an ROI. If there's no ROI, then why are you doing it? I mean, we've looked at ourselves working with businesses that are success based. Why? Because that's our model. I'll pay for whatever the technology costs up front. I don't have a problem with that. If you bring me a client or bring me a lead, they got to become a client that creates revenue, and I'm going to pay you on the back end just like I get paid on the back end.
Yeah.
By
I
the
think
way,
that's brilliant.
you'll probably make more money. I know you'll make more money than a traditional model. From our standpoint, that's how we look at it from ourselves. But then again, we don't. Instead of us spending a lot of money on marketing, because we have a lot of partners that refer us business, we actually take 5% of the fees our clients pay us, and 4% the client gets direct to a nonprofit that's important to them. 1% direct, we're a partner in 1% of the planet. And we try to direct it so wherever the client is, we try to find a cause that's close to them. And pretty much it's not difficult to do. You can always find something that's relatively close. The client the client sometimes basically says, "No, you just decide." Okay. But,
I love that.
we've given away over $1 million in the last couple of years,
I love
and
that idea.
all that ripples of impact of doing good together. That's important to us to help the client. And when you have a nonprofit client, it's amazing. They like to give the money back to themselves.
Gee, I wonder. But that's true partnership. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why don't you just charge me less? Well, that's not how we.
Yeah. I dig that. Okay, Mark, what is one thing that a business owner could do this week to improve control over their operations?
Well, if you haven't looked at what you're spending and how you're spending it, get a report from your bookkeeper, your finance, your CFO, whoever, and sit down and have a conversation as to what it is today versus what it was maybe 3 years ago, or even you want to go back 5 years to 2012. Believe it or not, it's 5 years since the COVID epidemic.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah, time flies, right?
Mhm.
But I would definitely do that. I would definitely look at, what are you spending today versus what you're not, and which check do you hate writing most every month?
I
Probably
love that
that's probably a
question.
good place to look.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what's something speaking directly to them once again, what's something they might not want to hear but really need to right now?
You're spending too much money and you're not getting a return on what you're spending. Take your expense report and put it into Claude Cowork Finance and ask Claude what's not right. I mean,
I
obviously,
love that idea.
yeah, obviously that you can be a little bit more descriptive, but if you ask Claude what's not right, it's going to come back and tell you. It's going to say you're spending this, but and if it's got comparatives, that's even better because Claude will then look at what did you spend last year versus what did you spend this year, and give you. By the way, did you know you're spending 13.2% more this year on this category than you spent last year? Why? What's the reason?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I love that. I love
anyhow,
utilizing that as a strategy
yeah,
and then start picking up the phone and making calls.
there you go.
Okay, so you've written a book around all of this.
Yes.
So you wanna share that with us?
Sure. So, expense to profit, but why are you sabotaging the growth that your business could have? It's all actual real life examples of clients not named. We don't name our clients. They're not on our website because we believe in anonymity. And they're real life examples in different categories of how we help clients. So there'll be some insights. It's not going to show you how to get it done because then you wouldn't need us, right? But there'll be enough insights in there to spark something in your mind that's going to say, huh, maybe I should look at that. Or that's an interesting way of looking at it. And you can get it. I mean, I think it's up on Amazon for like $1 on the digital copy, Kindle copy. So I didn't write it to make money. I wrote it to be able to bring information to people that could be helpful to make them successful in business.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, but who is it specifically written for? Like, who did you have in mind that you thought, "You know what? They really need this."
Any business owner,
At what level? At what
any
stage?
level, at any level, because it'll give you good insights when you got $1 million business or you got $100 million business. Everybody spends stupid money, and they spend it the same way. Believe it or not,
Really? What have
honestly.
you found?
Like I said, it doesn't matter. It's $1 million business, $100 million business. They're all going to spend money the same way. It's just at higher levels. We had this one electrical contractor in Chicago who was spending $14 million with one supplier, and so I asked him for his contract because we always do. We like things in writing. I don't have a contract. Why would you ask that? I said, well, we like to look at pricing versus what was promised. What was promised? We get best pricing. I said, well, how do you know you're getting best pricing? He says, look, my grandfather started the business 80 years ago. My father took over the business from my grandfather, and I took it over from my father. Of course, we're getting best prices. We've been doing business with them for years. And then we did the analysis. And they should have been spending $9.5 million, not $14 million. So I said, are you sure you're getting best prices? Okay, so they didn't play golf as often anymore.
Yeah.
But now he gets best pricing. So,
Yeah.
and like I said, it's just silly. Some people just, they just assume, well, of course, we've been doing business for 80 years with these people. Of course, we're getting best pricing.
I
Okay.
think that happens a lot. People take for granted that loyalty means, no need to be they don't need transparency. They think the loyalty's enough.
Think about it this way. If I, as a vendor, raise my prices every month between a half and 1%. Are you going to notice it as a business person? Unlikely,
Yeah.
highly unlikely. Okay. Now let's take that, compound that out. So if you've been doing business with somebody for 8 years and on average they've been raising the prices a half to 1% a month, rule of 72, right? Didn't your costs just double in 8 years? They did. Forget about regular price increases. I'm just talking about if they were just doing nothing but adding a half to 1%. A lot of businesses do that. A lot of suppliers do that. If you don't have a contract for pricing, kind of rule number one. And oh, by the way, it can be longer than 1 year. You just have to have some sort of terms in the contract as for how do price increases occur. Maybe it's a direct price increase from the manufacturer. That's how we put it in. And oh, by the
Yeah.
way, we have a right to go to that vendor and pull those invoices from the manufacturer to make sure, if it's a big enough spend, we're going to do that. Now, a couple of times a year, we're allowed to do that. That's part of our agreement with the vendors. It's written right into the agreement that we provide. So yeah, I mean, you gotta, if you're going to be successful in business, you got to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Handshakes are great, but everybody forgets what a handshake was about after a little bit of time.
Yeah. Sure do.
Black and
Well
white,
said.
can't forget what black and white says.
That's right.
So
That's
those are
right.
my suggestions. Get it in writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Rule number one rule, I think. Okay. When you are thinking about expense to profit in the next 10 years and what you are still building, what still feels unfinished for you as an entrepreneur in your growth? And then also, for the business.
So for me, I'm at the end of my full-time career. Not my career, but my full-time career. 3 years, I'll be 70 years old, and I will probably go to work, I don't know, maybe 3 days a week instead of five. It's beautiful here in Florida, so I got plenty of opportunity to play some golf.
I was gonna say lots of golf to play.
Yeah, lots of golf to play, beaches to go to, swimming pools, we got all that kind of good stuff. And my son, who came and joined the business 5 years ago, actually during COVID, he was in commercial real estate. And all of a sudden, there was no commercial real estate leasing or sales.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, so he joined the business because I needed somebody to run operations, and 2 years later became CLO. The business will be his, and we'll flip roles. So instead of me being CEO, he'll be CEO, but I won't be COO. That's for certain. I'll be CEO emeritus or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, but I'll still be around because, it's like, my son said to me first, he said, "Where's all this information you're telling me?" I said, "It's right here." Mhm. He's like, "Well, that doesn't work." So he started with the processes of putting everything down and creating systems and what have you. It's different when you kind of like run the business yourself, and all of a sudden you bring somebody in and you've got a plan going forward. So I expect the business will continue to grow because he will have learned enough that he can manage the business, bring somebody else in to be a COO, and allow the business to continue to expand. And I'll be around for this
Yes.
as well as be able to help out.
Love
Still
that.
make some rain every now and again.
I love that. Well, this is the final question, Mark, and thank you for I just want to acknowledge you on the incredible business that you've built, how you've continued to serve, how you give back. I mean, you are not only a visionary, but you're a servant leader. I can tell that in our conversation. So I thank you for doing that. Final question for you is it's kind of a hypothetical one. It's a tradition on our show. If you were, let's just say you've accomplished it all, you have gone as far as you could possibly take this, wherever that may lead. You've served many business, saved millions upon millions of dollars in expenses, and carried out, this legacy or moved this legacy forward. And for whatever reason, you can't leave the record of the win behind or the record of the journey behind. So you can't leave any of that. But what you do get to leave behind are three lessons for anybody aspiring to fill your shoes, your very large shoes. What would your lessons be for them?
Wow, that's a pretty intense question. So one would be attention to detail. Make sure that's like number one on your list that you have attention to detail. Number two is don't forget that family is most important. Yeah, but you got to get stuff done in business, but don't forget that family is most important. And this, just enjoy. If you do, you got to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, then you need to do something else because you're only as successful as enjoyment will allow you to be. And I think that's part of being successful in business as an entrepreneur is you gotta love what you do. If you don't love what you do, then you're definitely in the wrong place.
Thank you for that. You guys, we're gonna make sure that we link everything that expense to profit, which also they have some incredible resources for you on their website. I will definitely link that in the show notes. I'm sure Mark would welcome anybody that wants to reach out and connect with them. So we'll definitely make sure that we can put you in contact with him. Mark, any final or parting thoughts?
Just pay attention. There's a lot of opportunity out there, especially today. More businesses are being started today than ever before, but just pay attention. That's all I can tell you is just pay attention. Just be careful that you don't spend money frivolously because, take it from a guy who's done that in this past. It's easy to learn from your mistakes, but if you're going to learn from those mistakes, make them $500 mistakes, not $5,000 mistakes.
Well said. Make the dollars count.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here, Mark. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kimberly, for having me.